So here's my old window. Got it from original from the house, built in 1963. It's aluminum frame with storm windows and nice thick screens. Really hard to see out, not quite as pretty. When we're done, we're gonna have a window that looks like this. Nice and pretty, really clear view outside, very insulated. It's awesome. So I've already removed all the drywall out to get to the studs in the frame of the window, so you can see all the trim work is gone already. Just do that with an oscillating saw to get all that out. And now I'm gonna remove this little lip of drywall right there. You can just barely see that I've got a finger underneath that drywall. Make this nice and flush so I can end up putting trim around there when the window's done. So got my mask on now. What we'll do is I'll take this oscillating saw and use the blade along with a vacuum to keep the room really clear of sawdust. Got a nice dust collector here along with my vacuum and to keep all the sawdust out, and I'll take that up on the window and remove all the extra. So before we begin demoing the old window, I have all this cleaned up here, nice and flush. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the size of this windowsill, or this window frame, I mean, to make sure that my new window, which is right here, is the right size. So we'll measure across the bottom. It looks like we're at about 3 feet, so 36 and a quarter. So I'll do the same thing up and down here in a minute, but I got 36 and a quarter, so across the top of my window. It should be just under 36. It looks like we'll have lots of room there. Big old gap to be perfect, about 1/4 of an inch on each side. That'll be perfect for the spray foam to insulate it really well. I'll do the same thing on the top, and then I'll start ripping out the old one. So to remove the weather screen here, the storm window, I'm just gonna take these little screws. Let's pop them off, and then I'll grab a crowbar and just pry this thing away from the caulk. So sometimes that caulk is just too strong. I can't get a good enough grip in there. So I'm gonna go inside, pop this screen out right here. That way I can get a better grip and I can get the glass out first before I actually take the frame of the storm window off. So I'm back inside. I got that storm window off and I was actually able to remove the glass from the inside. There's no rhyme or reason in particular way to remove the window, the old window. I'm just trying to get it out with the least damage and try not to break any glass along the way. So this is my pile of scrap aluminum and glass. So once I'm all done with these 3 windows that I've been replacing, I'll take all the aluminum up to the scrapyard in Oklahoma City, and I will separate the glass from the old aluminum and take it to the recycling. So actually close to 0% of this window, the old windows, get thrown away, which is pretty cool. Now I'm back outside, got the glass and the screen off of this storm window frame, so I can just take the pry bar and take it off. I've got the storm window screen and frame off. So I can now take a look at these panes. These are my single pane glass windows from the 1960s. And so I have a very easy way to get these panes out. We're trying not to break them. That's the goal here. And so this little piece of plastic, this is just a plastic rubber or plastic stripping that goes along the side here. I can take a razor blade and just slide it along so I can get underneath it. And I usually can just pop this up, pull it out, get rid of that later. I just make a big mess in my yard when I'm doing this. I'll get rid of all of this stuff. So I've got all those trim pieces removed just from this one. I'll leave the other ones for a minute. But the last thing I'll do here before I can take this glass out is usually in each corner there's a little bit of caulk. I think I already got the one out of this one, but underneath all this kind of all this junk, there's a little bit of caulk right there. All we're gonna do is we're gonna take our razor blade and just cut that caulk out so that we can pop the window off. Should be pretty easy. So with this one, got all that caulk off. And we'll just pop the window up a little bit, push it forward toward you, and then take it out into the frame. We're all the way to the base here. And now it's stuck in there. So what we'll do is we will slide the pane up a little bit until I can rotate the glass inside. I can rotate that glass inside the house and out, and it's free. Now I'll just do the same thing with the other 3 panes. So I've got all my panes out. I'm back inside now. Next thing I'll do is take these guys, just twist them a little bit, and then punch them out. So I'll have just 2 big open panes. Now I've got my 2 open panes. Remove those little half sashes or half barriers there, whatever they're called. So what I'll do is I'll push up my lower pane that I can move. I'll just start twisting it basically. So I'll leave one side up, pull down on the other. I'll just keep doing that. I may have to use both hands. I'm going to have to put the camera down, but keep doing that until I can pop it out of the frame. I'm also going to remove the sash springs by just unscrewing that screw up in the upper corner of each side. That will prevent the spring once inside of here. That's what raises or makes it easier to raise up the sash from popping on me later. So I'm actually going to do this without the camera on, but all you do is just unscrew those and it'll pop real loud, but everything should be contained inside of that cylinder. So now I've got it just down to the actual frame of the window, no more sash in there anymore. All I've got left now is this piece right here, this crossbar. So I'll do the same thing I did with the other crossbars. I'll twist it and then push it out, and that'll leave me just the frame to take out. All right, so now we've just got the frame of the window. We're almost done. We've got a big hole in our house, so it's nice outside today, but it's best to do this on a day that you can have a big hole in your house. So I usually start by taking a pry bar, sticking it underneath the middle of the bottom here, and pulling up, but really there's no wrong way to do this. So do whatever is gonna get that window out, causing the least amount of damage. So now I've got my frame out. It was a little bit messier of a job than I would have liked to do, but now I'll clean this up. So vacuum up all the debris and dust, get off all this caulk from the brick and clean that up real nice. Try and get extra mortar out of the brick joints. Just make sure those are nice and smooth. And then any nails that remain, I'm gonna take those out as well. Just to make sure I have a really clean frame for my new window to go into. Another nail there. Maybe some more nails up on the header there, we'll see. But I'm just make sure this is really clean for my new window. So we're all cleaned up. I got rid of all the caulk around the brick. There's a lot of caulk on that window. So the next thing I'm going to do is I will lay a layer of flashing tape. This is 6-inch flashing tape. You can cut off whatever else you don't need, so I can't really jam a whole lot of it down in there into the cracks. So I'll cut off, a couple inches of that one with the razor knife, and then I'll put a bead of silicone all the way around the edge on top of that flashing tape, just on the bottom of the window, just to keep the water out. Got my caulk in place. Now it's time to set my window. One thing I'm going to have right here before I do this, I'm going to have some shims. This will make sure that I can prevent the window from falling through or falling back on me if I don't have another person. Anything bigger than this window, I might want to have another person on the outside just to make sure that the window doesn't fall through. It's a pretty pricey piece of hardware, and not only that, you wouldn't want to end up with a hole in your house for the time being. So I definitely have some shims on hand to make sure that I can stick this in place exactly where I want it. Got my new window installed. It's all shimmed up right now. So I've got shims at each location on the corners there just to keep it in place. One thing I did was I measured at each corner the distance from the window to the edge of the frame, not the edge of the drywall because there will be some give there, but to the edge of the frame. Had about 1.25 inch measurement there. That helps to make sure, as long as it's 1.25 inch at each corner, that the window is square. Next thing I'll do is I'll use a carpenter's square to make sure that it's actually square in there, inside of there, make sure it's not at an angle. And then lastly, I'll use a level to make sure that it's actually plumb and not leaning in one way or the other. but my measurements of 1.25 inches should have done that already for me. I'm glad I went ahead and used that level, because one thing I noticed or didn't notice earlier was that my framing does not match up perfectly flush there. So I was going off the lower one, which was putting my window further out towards the outside, and in reality it should have been further in. And so now I've got it correctly plumb, which is straight up and down, so that it will open correctly. I also made sure that it's completely square, so that every corner is a complete 90-degree angle, even though my framing might not necessarily be square. So next I'm going to take a 3/8 inch drill bit and drill a nice hole through the vinyl right there, so that I can put the screws in. There's 4 screws in this window pack, 1 on each corner on the side, so 2 on each side, 1 at top, 1 at bottom. And I actually have to put the window, this hole is not actually for that screw, this is an adjustment screw, you can kind of see it in there. So I'll drill my own hole right there for those screws and put it in. Then the caps that come are sized for a 3/8 inch drill bit with a little bit of play. So I'll go ahead and drill through. I only want to drill through the first layer of vinyl though. So you can kind of see with this one, there's a layer of vinyl and then there's an open void there. We want to stop drilling after we hit that open void. And then lastly, I'll use an 1/8 inch drill bit to drill all the way through to the other side through the shims, and this will give a nice pilot hole for our screw that'll actually go in here. Now I'll take the screws that were provided in the hardware pack and just screw them in. Note that these screws don't go all the way in though. They just sit in that void. The head of them sits in that void between the 2 pieces of vinyl. This prevents the window from moving as we put all the spray foam in. That'll actually prevent it from moving at all. So I'm going to go ahead and pop this in. And lastly for the screws, there's a little screw cover cap that we'll put on there to just kind of conceal that hole. Alright, so the last step, I got my screws in and they're behind the sashes. And I've already spray foamed in. So I use this Great Stuff window and door from Lowe's and just surround the entire window with it. This is actually what keeps the window in place and keeps it from moving, more so than the screws or the shims do. And it's actually super insulating, so it helps to keep the cold air out. And this is what it looks like. So we're gonna let this dry and come back to it later. So I'm actually moving outside to a different window that I finished up last weekend. So this foam is all dry, and I'm gonna take this off and make it nice and clean. You can do this on the inside and the outside. Make it a nice clean square just by using that oscillating saw again. So come at it one way and then come out the other way. And because these are vinyl windows, they don't really scratch up all that easy. Just be careful with the oscillating saw. Make sure not get too close and don't vibrate too hard. But that spray foam just cuts really, really easily with the oscillating saw. So on the outside of the house, I now added my trim pieces. Cut those at I think that's about 2 inches wide. For these windows in particular, I have to have some sort of drain because of the way they're mounted. So I route out or use a table saw to cut out a little bit of a drain there for the water that gets inside of the window so it can weep away. And I've done my caulk. So I have all my caulk in, and we can see that it's nice and watertight. And we'll get started on the inside. On bigger windows like this one, my weep drain is a little bit different, so it's cut a little wider to accommodate for that little drain flap there. I also use cedar wood. This is all cedar, even though it's painted white. It's all cedar, and that helps with the weather tolerance over time. All right, on the inside, I've now cut away all that excess spray foam, and I've cut my trim pieces inside. I'm choosing to use wood here as my trim, just longer lasting and a little bit easier for me to work with. I'm a little bit more familiar with working with wood over working with drywall, even though it may be a little bit more expensive. So the way I've chosen to do this is I'll paint these pieces and then nail them in, and then I'll put another piece of trim out here, and that will create this nice flush overlay and really give the window a nice frame. So I also haven't routed this at all. Like the edge of this is just very square. That's an intentional choice, but you can route it or put whatever you want in there. I typically put about a 2-inch gap or 2-inch overhang on the windowsill there, just to kind of give it that look, and then I'll hang some trim underneath it as well to put that window stool on there. So in this case, I measured, this is about 1 7/8 of an inch. In other places of the house, it's 2 inches or 2 1/4. Really important to set the window perfectly straight or distance from the edge there, because otherwise you'd end up with 1 7/8 here, but at the top it may be 2 1/4, and then you'd have to cut your board at an angle or cut your drywall at an angle. So we don't want to do that. So it's best to just make sure the window is really straight. One other thing that I noticed when I was putting this trim in over on this wide window here is that I didn't account for that the window can actually bend outward, and we can kind of see that it has. So on the edge of the trim here in the corner, that's flush. Same thing over in this corner, but in the middle, there's a big separation about 1/4 of an inch or so. That's because the window itself is actually pushed out, and I didn't account for that. So make sure when you're setting your windows that you account for stuff like that, making sure your window is exactly square, completely straight up and down, straight plumb, just really set correctly.